bring in volunteer number 85.
I'm still gonna get paid.
Volunteers receiving a dose of synthesized
Please don't put
substrate
that needle in me.
B282.
No, stop. Wait.
Citywide curfew is now in effect. You are ordered to remain in your homes and off the streets. Failure to comply will result in prosecution.
It's the 8th consecutive year of Mayor Mustard. Will he be re-elected?
Mayhem in the city. Homeless are fighting against the government. People are fighting for their rights.
What the fuck?
There's another one! Go!
No babies.
I present to you the crew, the most incredible crackheads that you'll ever meet.
I have reduced the number of homeless people in the city to basically zero.
The mayor's fucking multing people.
They're exterminating everybody. You are finally ready, my China. It's time.
We don't want this party turning into a massacre.
Massacre sounds good to me.
Looking good, come you!
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the latest episode of Fresh Cuts. This is Mike. Joining me as always, it's Mr. Venom. What's up, Venom?
Greetings and salutations, homeless alcoholics. Though I don't know how they would be able to listen to a podcast, so whatever. How the hell you doing, Mike? I'm doing all right.
I'm doing well. Well, technology is amazing these days, so who knows?
Actually, yeah, I should shut up because I actually saw a homeless person with a fucking MacBook the other day. I'm not kidding. Like, they had the shopping cart full of like all their possessions, and then they had a MacBook Pro outside of Starbucks. I'm like, wow, he spent all his money on his MacBook. That's why he's homeless.
Yeah, that's hilarious. Also with us, it's Don and Ellie. What's up, Don?
Yeah, what's going on? Always happy to be here.
All right. Well, this week we are covering the 2024 release Trash. And if that title rings a bell somewhat, that's because there was the Street Trash from 1987. And I think when this one was getting made, people were wondering, what is this? Is it a sequel? Is it a remake? The one thing I read from the writer, was that it's supposed to be more of a sequel than a remake. So take that for what it is. I haven't seen, I believe the original was from 87, I think, and I haven't seen it in a long time. I mean, I generally remember it, but not enough to even like say what this, like, if this comes off as a remake or a sequel. But
there's similarities. There's similarities, but it's not that tight. I mean, you can go into this not even knowing that there's an original, and you'll be fine.
Yep. In fact, I think you should.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so too, because it definitely doesn't feel like a continuation of anything, like the way the story's structured, but get into that more. But from IMDb, the synopsis: a group of homeless misfits must fight for survival when they discover a plot to exterminate every homeless person in the city. The one person I recognize in this is the guy that was in Fried Berry. I think that's him, though. The old long hair.
Yeah, that's
2-Bit. Yep.
2-Bit. Yeah. Yeah, that's him.
Yeah, that's right. I guess his name is Gary Green, the actor. Cool. All right. Well, we will start off with our general thoughts. So, Venom, what did you think of 2024 as a Street Trash?
All right, before I get into it, I do want to give just a quick opinion on the original. I am not a fan of the original movie. I like all the practical effects, yes, but I feel like that movie is incredibly disjointed. I mean, when you actually watch it, the whole thing with the Viper alcohol and the melting homeless people is almost a subplot. Like, it doesn't even really matter, to the point where there's no resolution for that plot. It literally, they just kind of leave it dangling. And the majority of the third act is more about this war between these two rival homeless groups, you know, one led by our supposed protagonist, Fred, who I have a lot of issues with Fred as a protagonist, but too much to get into today. And then Bronson, who was, you know, the leader of the other group of homeless people, the ones who actually were kind of in control. Like, there was no police, there was no government. It was all just based on these street people. Now, to Street Trash 2024, I gotta say, this is probably one of the biggest surprises of 2024 for me. I absolutely love this movie. I had such a great time with it. They corrected so many of the problems that the original movie has. This movie actually has an arc, actually has a story, a very obvious beginning, middle, and end. The whole thing with the poison gas, which was derived from the Viper alcohol, it actually has meaning in this movie, and actually has something to do with the main plot. It has a lot to do with the main plot. It basically is the main plot. So yeah, I also thought this movie was endlessly funnier than the original. Like, the original has moments of comedy, but this one, I'm sorry, I didn't go more than 5 minutes without laughing at either some interaction, some line. Sokol, pretty much every time Sokol was on screen, I fucking lost it. I absolutely love Sokol. I even named this chat The Adventures of Sokol. He's definitely the character that kind of resonated with me the most. But yeah, just the homeless people in this movie are so much more likable than the original. You know, there's like a gang rape scene in the original that kind of sours you on the protagonist a little bit, on Fred, the protagonist. But in this one, Ronald, our main protagonist, is an incredibly likable character. Just about every homeless person on that side of the fence who has nothing to do with the government or the rich people, they're all likable. They're funny. Just, yeah, I was actually sad when one of them died, when one of them actually succumbs to the poison gas. I was actually very sad because he was one of my favorite characters leading up to that moment. So yeah, this movie is, in my opinion, my personal opinion, head and shoulders above the original. Like I said, there's an actual storyline. There's an actual protagonist and antagonist. Because honestly, I mean, I guess you could say Bronson was the antagonist of the first movie, but he's just another, you know, a rival homeless faction. It just, like I said, that original movie is so disjointed. It's almost a frustrating watch, in all honesty. It really is. Whereas this one was fun. Now, obviously, I haven't even gotten into the practical effects, but the practical effects are fucking spectacular. I absolutely love what we get here. I love that they play around. You know, not everybody just melts. Like, some people, their limbs break off. Other people, you know, their heads explode and just, you know, glorious, glorious gore. Not quite a Terrifier film by any stretch, because a lot of the gore in this movie isn't red. You know, a lot of it is like purple and green. And when our, you know, well, I'll save that one. There is one that's yellow, but I won't say whose that is, because that might be a little bit of a spoiler. But yeah, this movie, you know, I'm not saying that it's one of the best of the year. It is not in my top 10. It is, and it absolutely will not be in my top 10 at the end of the year, as we approach the end of the year now. But I had such a good time with this movie. I just watched the original Street Trash 2 nights ago as a refresher going into this one. And yeah, man, I just had an absolutely great time with it. Just, I can't say enough good things about it. This decent cinematography, a good score. I thought the song that's playing during the final like when the final interaction with everyone, when they're going and the siege on the rich people's, on the mayor's facility, whatever you want to call it. All of it, just from beginning to end, I had a great time with this one. Like I said, just I think this movie is 5 times better than the original. I know there's going to be a lot of people that disagree, because the original movie, it's in the 80s, it's set in a dystopian New York, so it's a lot different than this one. And I know, that kind of 80s grindhouse feel is very charming to some people. This one definitely doesn't really, at least in my opinion, doesn't really have that much of a grindhouse feel to it. And obviously, yes, it's gory, it's crazy, it's over the top. But yeah, the only major issue I had with this movie, and I'll get more in depth with it later, is the Rat King. I thought the Rat King ended up being a little bit of a wasted character in this one, but otherwise, I had an absolute blast with Street Trash 2024. I think whether you're a fan of the original or not, I think this is one to watch, because like I said, I don't like the original, and I had an absolute blast with this one. And maybe it's because I had low expectations, because I don't like the original that much. Maybe I wasn't expecting much from this one, but for whatever it's worth, I ended up having a great time. I loved all these characters, and a silly movie like this to actually make me care about the characters and actually make me sad when one of them, dies. I think this movie is an absolute win. So yeah, high recommend for me. It's a great turn your brain off. Don't try to interject logic into this. Don't try to, question the science. Just take it at face value and have an absolutely great time. At least I did. So yeah, I'll leave my general thoughts at that.
All right, let's kick it on over to Don. How about your general thoughts?
As Venom did, I'm going to also speak briefly on the original, because that's pretty much all it really deserves. The original is basically only memorable to me for score effects and not much else. It's very much a product of the late 80s, and I have to say this, I am not a fan of late 80s cheese. In fact, I will go ahead and say this out loud. I think after from post 1985 to 1990, the genre really only has 4 films of value: Hellraiser, Pumpkinhead, Child's Play, and Evil Dead 2. And pretty much everything else is basically either not really worth your time, or your tolerance level for the cheese it features is going to vary. Some of that's going to, vary from film to film, of course, but for the most part, the late 80s is full of crap that nobody's really going to say much about, because your nostalgia is going to tell you I had a lot of fun with it and printing it as a kid, and I'm going to stay on that course for the rest of my life. So yeah, I'm going to say this: late 80s suck, and you have nostalgia glasses, deal with it. And Street Trash is unfortunately one of those movies. The Venom is completely on point there. The melting down and all of the various, the body melting is a subplot that gets dealt with by the halfway point, and the rest of the film just kind of meanders onwards to not really have much of a value at all. So yeah, I don't really care for the original that much. It's kind of one of those, yeah, I've seen it now. I don't really have to watch it again anymore. And I kind of wasn't really expecting much from this one. So yeah, this one kind of being better is, this one is better, but again, I'm not really saying that's a high bar to clear, because I had such a low one for the original. But even still, I don't think this is really all that great of a film. Now, I will say I do like the storyline here. I think it's a very, pressing one. We just basically had an election as we recorded this, and we're hot button issues, all the war and homelessness, and the elites fighting off the poor. All of that's timely and topical, and again, something we can discuss at a later date. But I thought it was a fun introduction. I like the setup. You get to meet the characters. The homeless people here are 10 times more interesting, 10 times more fun. I really like a lot of the interactions that we get in the first third of this. setting up what's going on between them, the various interjections by the tyrannical government that's looking to wipe them off the streets. And, we get the few hints of body melting, but not, we know that there's going to be more to come just based off of the few little glimpses we get. So it starts off nicely enough, and then it kind of just gets bogged down in this it's a weird feeling where I don't really get the impression that, like the original, it's really telling a story about people melting down, and it's trying to tell some other kind of a story. I don't mind that it's telling that kind of story. It manages to, inject the film with all kinds of aspects that I enjoy in my movies. But it's one of those where it doesn't really give off of a horror tone for much of the running time. And it's kind of one of those where I don't really want to spoil it more than just saying a lot of it didn't feel like a horror movie. It's still not a bad time. I mean, you still get a lot of action, you still get a lot of gore, you still get some good, body meltdowns, and some great practical gore effects, and the goopy meltdowns, and limbs falling off and skin splitting and all that kind of good stuff. All of that looks great. Some of it's kind of cheesy looking, but that's by design. So I mean, you can take it or leave it, but they look good. Practical effects. It looks good on that front. But I don't really like the idea that, once again, the majority of the movie is promoted on it being body melting and all this kind of goopy gore effects, but then it tells a different kind of a story that doesn't really need body melting to tell it. It feels more like that's just kind of a side effect to the other kind of story that they're trying to tell. And your opinion on that may vary. I'm not necessarily opposed to it, but it's just one of those, I really wasn't expecting it in this movie. So the idea that it goes into that direction and it features those kinds of elements, I don't really want to say too much, but it's not really for me. But I can understand a lot of people enjoying it. So take that for what you will. It's certainly not a bad watch. I mean, it's barely 80 minutes. I mean, I think with the ending credits, it's like an hour and 25, right? Because I didn't check to see what the running time was.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah, because it's
quick.
Yeah, it's a very quick watch. And yeah, there's a lot to like about it. It's just one of those where some of the elements involved in the film are aspects I don't really want in my horror movies. So it's a personal preference thing. But if it doesn't bother you and you're fine with everything in here, I think you'll enjoy it. Not a top 10 for me, but I'm not opposed to seeing it on other people's lists. I think it's one of those where I can see some people saying, maybe this was their favorite film of the year. Maybe it's one of those that, resonates with them a little bit more. But yeah, overall for me, I enjoy it for what it is, but it's one of those where I don't want to say too much, but there's elements to it that I don't enjoy in horror movies. And that's just a personal preference thing. I think there's probably going to be a lot of people that feel the same way, just with various other aspects. But overall, not a bad time. I didn't hate it. I didn't love it, but I didn't hate it either. So kind of middle of the road for me. At the risk of saying anything else for spoilers, I guess, back to you.
Okay, so I have seen the original Street Trash. It's been a long time, and I really was intending to rewatch it. Once I found out that this was more kind of a sequel or just only like loosely related, it wasn't as big of a priority, but I still would have liked to, just because it's been so long. I don't really have many thoughts just based on like the small memory I have of it. So I'll leave it at that for the original Street Trash. As far as this one goes, yeah, I think it's a fun little independent movie that does a lot of things right. It's not gonna blow anyone's mind, but to me, if you're a small budget filmmaker and you're trying to make like a gross practical effect movie, this is kind of like the blueprint to do it. I got a kick out of the characters. I thought they were hilarious. Like the the B movie budget Stanley Kubrick look-alike guy. He was pretty funny. I liked 8-bit, or was it 8 or 2-bit?
2-bit.
Fryberry.
2-bit.
2-bit. Yeah,
2-bit.
I thought he was kind of funny. And with the what was the name of the little blue character there? Sokol. That was kind of funny, and like I was a little worried that they were going to like do that, like overplay that hand, but I thought it was just like the right amount not to overdo it. But yeah, overall, it's a small story, but I like the how it played out. I like the arc. I like that they didn't try to go too big over the top outside of their budgets. Overall, I just had a fun time with it. It's like I said, it's not going to be on a top 10, but if you're telling me that, hey, we're going to watch a budget movie called Street Trash with cool practical effects, that's about what it delivered. It kind of delivered. I didn't really have expectations because I didn't hear too much about this going into it. And like I said, as I didn't have a big memory of the original, I didn't really even have any expectations based on it, other than like I remember thinking the practical effects in the original were cool, but otherwise that's about it. So I don't have a ton to add. Like I said, it's not a big thinker of a movie. It's just straight up like a band of like kind of misfit and homeless and whatever else you would refer to them are trying to defend themselves from like a wider network of conspiracy and the wealthy and people trying to destroy their way of life. And it plays out how it does. And I thought we get a satisfying conclusion. And I mean, I would recommend it if you're into like low budget horror movies. So there you go. And I'll kick it back to you, Venom.
I agree with Don that this movie isn't really all that much horror, but it's 10 times more horror than the last movie. Like I said, with the last movie, the whole body melting thing was just a subplot. Like we get no explanation. Just, the liquor store owner, Ed, finds that case of liquor, sells it for $1 a bottle, and people start melting after they drink it. And that's it. That's pretty much all, the backstory that we get on the Viper liquid, whereas here, it actually has something to do with the main plot, the main storyline, because the government is actually using it to kind of deal with their homeless situation. Like I just love that there was an actual, like I said, I can't say it enough. There's an actual arc in this movie, and I just did a show just last night, where we review the original Terrifier movie, and I kind of have the same complaints with that one. The original Terrifier has no real story. It's just Art the Clown kills a bunch of people that he meets on the street. That's it. And then Terrifier 2 and 3 kind of upped the ante a little bit, gave me at least a little bit more of what I wanted. And that's exactly what this is. Street Trash is now the new Terrifier 2 and 3, because it took concepts from the original and just heightened them, and actually, like I said, made an actual story with heroes and villains and a confrontation at the end, whereas the first movie barely has any of that. I mean, in the first movie, Bronson, and the final fight is between Bronson and some teenage kid. Like, it doesn't even make sense. Until Bronson starts going after Fred, the main homeless guy in the first one. Again, I don't want to talk too much about the original because, like Don said, it's just not a great film. It has its fans, I'm sure. Maybe if it was something that I watched a lot since 1987, I would have a slightly higher opinion of it. I watched it once in the late 80s, remembered thinking, this isn't really horror and it's not all that interesting. And like I said, the rape scene just kind of turned me off. So, but this one, like I said, there's like nothing here that turns me off. Everything connects. All the homeless characters connect with each other. The body melting connects with the government and the mayor and everything that they're doing. So yeah, just absolutely head and shoulders. And another thing too is the first movie. It's so the first movie is so disjointed. I feel like it didn't know what it wanted to be. Like, did it want to be a body horror film about this poison liquor that's killing homeless people, or did it want to be a gritty crime drama about these, rival homeless factions? It didn't really know what it wanted to be. This movie at least knew what it wanted to be. Whether you believe it's horror or not, that's up to your personal opinion, and all opinions are valid. But like I said, at least everything flows into each other in this movie. It makes sense. Like I said, I can't say enough good things about this. I can't believe it's sitting on a 4.3 on IMDb right now. That's upsetting to me.
I think it's just nobody's really has it because it's Screambox.
Right. That is valid. Yeah, it's only got 250 reviews, but actually here, let me put my rating in here right now, which I'll keep to myself. But yeah, like I said, maybe it's because I just watched the original, 2 nights ago as a refresher. And maybe that's why I'm so jazzed on this one, because this one, like I said, it's head and shoulders better in my opinion. If you're a fan of good characterizations, if you're just a fan of good filmmaking, this movie is just so much better. Why the change to South Africa? I don't know.
That's where Ryan's from. I think that's where.
Oh, is that why? Okay. Well, I guess that makes sense.
That's where Fried Berry's from. That's where Fried Berry's set there. I think it's just because he's local.
That makes sense. Well, it's not like he had to set the movie in South Africa, though. He could have shot it there.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying is that Fried Berry is also set there. So I think it's just because he's local.
Right. Like I said, they could shoot it in South Africa and just say it's Montana. I mean, it's well, maybe not Montana. Bad example, but you know what I mean. But yeah, there's no real, there's the only connective tissue between this movie and the original is the Viper. That's it. It's just the Viper liquor. We actually do see one homeless person in this movie actually drink a bottle of it. And with the expected results that we got all through the 1987 movie. Most of the deaths in this one are more the government weaponizing that liquor and turning it into a gas so that when it's sprayed in someone's face, exact same effect as drinking it in the original movie. So, there is connective tissue here. I would have liked to have seen even a throwaway line connecting this movie to the original. If this is supposed to be a sequel, like Mike said, the director said, if this is supposed to be a sequel, just give me one throwaway line like, we heard stories about this liquor that was killing homeless people in New York, and we went there and we stole the last bottles of it that were left to work. Just give me something that connects the two, because ultimately this movie doesn't. And maybe I only got a chance to watch this movie once, unfortunately. I usually like to watch my movies twice before I review them, but I had a busy weekend, so. But it's maybe there was a line in there, some kind of connective tissue to the original, and maybe I just missed it. But regardless, I would have liked to have seen a little something. If you're going to claim that this is a sequel, then you got to have some connection to the original, other than just the label on the bottle of liquor being the same. You know what I mean? So, but ultimately, like I said, I had a great time with this movie. Yes. I recognize that it might be because my expectations were low, but I don't care. I'm telling you my experience with the movie. I literally just finished watching it, 25 minutes ago or so, and I just had an ear-to-ear grin on my face when the movie was over. I could have lived without the post-credits scene, but yeah, we'll talk about that later. It was still funny. I just don't know that I really needed to see that. But anyway.
Yeah, same here.
Like I said, I love Sokol, so any scene that he's in is endlessly entertaining to me. But yeah, maybe they went a little over the line with that last one. But no big deal. Anything else you guys want to add before we get into what I would imagine will be a very quick walkthrough? I mean, not a whole lot of intricacies with this movie.
And that thing that's gonna spoil it.
Mike?
Yeah, no, I think I'm good.
All right. Well, like I said, this is going to be a quickie. For those who remember the original, we've already talked about it a bunch. So even if you haven't seen the original, you got a basic idea of what it is. It's basically just two warring homeless factions, and then this subplot of this alcohol that's killing homeless people. This one, we get a little bit more involved with the plot. Um, Basically, our movie opens up with a cold open where we see a homeless person getting brought into like some type of medical facility. He's given an injection of some glowing liquid, and then he basically just starts to melt. Exactly what we saw, in the original movie back in '87. So the cold open is already showing us that there's an actual story here, that the melting isn't just some weird subplot. This is something that this local government in what is it, in Cape Town, South Africa, they are purposely utilizing, like I said, weaponizing this stuff to try to clear their streets of the homeless. Just to give you some background too, we live in the year is 2050. We are in Cape Town, South Africa. The unemployment rate is 90%. 90, my friends. Literally 90% of the population is unemployed. They even make a comment about how the middle class is shrinking. Everybody is either rich or poor. Like there's very little middle ground in Cape Town in 2050. And of course, the mayor deems the homeless issue like a big problem that they have to deal with, because obviously there's more homeless than there are rich. Don't forget, it's a 90% unemployment rate. So if the rich and the homeless were to go to war in this scenario, I'm pretty sure we know who's going to win. But anyway, we at that point we meet Ronald and Alex. Alex is a young female who looks like she's newly homeless. Later on, we find out that she lost her family. Her parents died. Her father died in an accident at his job. Mom died from a broken heart, and then her younger sister got kidnapped by the government. Actually, that's kind of a plot line that kind of was left dangling in this movie. They talk about
that was something I was going to bring up before, not being spoilers or not, because whatever happened to the family?
Yeah, no idea. Whatever happened to all those kids that they stole? Like I thought maybe they were making them into soldiers, but they don't tell us.
That was my guess. Is that was my initial guess was that the kids of the homeless people were taken away and they were the first subjects, but then they got used up, and so now they're turning to the homeless.
I mean, that's just as good a guess as anything I would have come up with. So yeah, I'm good with that. So yeah, like I said, kids are being taken. Alex is left alone, no family, and she's homeless. When we first meet her, she's being attacked by a couple of the Rat King's goons. And like I said, we spend half of this movie kind of building up the Rat King, talking about how, she runs the streets and blah, blah, blah. And then when we finally meet her, it's actually a little bit of a disappointment, but we'll get to that in a little bit. We also meet Ronald in this scene. Ronald is kind of like the de facto leader of this particular group of homeless people that we're following. He's kind of the smartest. At one point, he actually takes a bath and puts on a suit and tricks an actual rich person, makes him think that he's one of them right before pickpocketing him and taking his wallet. So I thought that was kind of interesting. So yeah, Ronald is very savvy. We meet Chef. Chef is the painfully Jewish character. Like literally, he says stuff like shitza and just all meshugana and all the different Jewishisms, if you will. So he is a painfully Jewish character. We meet other people. We talked about 2-Bit, played by Gary Green. He is a very interesting character because he comes off as absolutely insane. He has this little imaginary friend called Sokol, who's basically this very short, purple, almost alien looking creature. I don't know, just almost like a Muppet gone wrong, if you will. And he's the horniest creature on the planet. All he ever talks about is, I'm horny, I want to fuck her. He's like Sokol and 2-Bit end up having whole conversations about, are you gonna fuck that girl? Speaking about Alex, of course, because Alex is actually fairly young, fairly cute to be hanging around, this group of, old grizzled homeless people. So I actually started to worry about Alex a little bit early on, especially after watching the original so recently. But, things work out for Alex. Anyway, we find out that the mayor and the local government have created these drones, these robot drones that, like I said, they weaponize the Viper alcohol. They turn it into a gas. They put canisters of it inside of these drones, and basically these drones just kind of fly around throughout the city at night. When they run into someone, like they scan people, and once they deem someone to be like homeless or degenerate or whatever the case may be, they spray the Viper in their face, and that's when we get the glorious body melting. And I mean, some of my favorite effects in this movie were the broken bones, the way that some people's limbs would kind of like they would take a step forward, but the bottom part of their leg would stay behind because like the bone just kind of split off because the Viper liquid is, basically liquefying people. It liquefies their bones. It basically leaves them in a puddle. They're basically just a puddle of goo. Unless, they get into some kind of damage, because they do show in a homeless guy drink some of the Viper. He starts to melt, but then he gets hit by a car. Very RoboCop, if you remember the acid guy in RoboCop. But then his head and severed limbs stay on the street for a little while. So I guess the alcohol didn't get the time to actually melt his entire body. So bits and pieces of him are still on the street in the next scene where they're actually cleaning it up. So obviously, and then in this world too, power is a commodity. Batteries, because the power grid is pretty much gone. Like there's no electric company, there's no real way of getting, other than for the rich people, of course. But I'm saying for the poor people, for them to be able to get power for light, to cook, whatever they need power for, they need to steal or acquire batteries. And batteries are almost like a commodity, almost like a currency, I should say, in this movie, because like I said, when we first meet Alex, she's being accosted by two of Rat King's goons. Ronald sees this and basically makes the comment that if she's not one of them, then she's one of us. So obviously Ronald is this do-gooder who always wants to help people that are being attacked by Rat King's goons. He happens to have a battery with him that he just stole, a battery that everybody in his homeless group is relying on him bringing back. But instead, he ends up trading it to the Rat King's goons in exchange for Alex's life. And that's how Alex basically becomes a part of this group. The movie just kind of goes along. We get more attacks, more drone attacks, blah, blah, blah. We get a cop. Our main cop is named Officer Maggot. And literally in the first scene that we see him in, he gets his dick chopped off by a fence, by a goddamn chain link fence of all things. It's ridiculous, but it just made me laugh endlessly. And then, oh shit, what did they call him the rest of the movie? Boner Cop. They called him Boner Cop the rest of the fucking movie. So anyway, this is the stupid silliness of this movie that worked for me, that I'm sure is not going to work for a lot of people, but whatever. All right, so basically, like I said, lots of different scenes of people getting melted. Eventually, Alex realizes that the drones, inside of the drones are batteries that last potentially months, if not years, because those drones are totally autonomous. They're turned on and they're just set. They're set free, and they go and they look for homeless people and kill them. So she ends up making a deal with the Rat King. Basically, and like I said, folks, when we meet the Rat King, it's such a disappointment because she's basically, she can barely move. She's one of those gang leaders that basically has everything done for her because she can't physically do anything herself. She looks like she's on the brink of death. She's hooked up to all of these machines that are basically keeping her alive, but she's still doling out orders. And then that's literally it. That's the last time we see the Rat King. So all that buildup just to see this decrepit woman who can barely move. And honestly, I honestly thought maybe we would see more of her later during the final confrontation, but nope, we never see her again. So it kind of turns into an inconsequential character. Her goons end up being helpful later, but I'll get to that. Eventually, the government or the mayor decides that rather than just sending the drones out, that it's taking too long. So he literally sends his patrols out to just round up all the homeless people they can get. Literally, they just round them all up. They lie to them, of course. Like, they don't arrest them. They tell them that, we need you to come with us. Your government needs you. You'll be paid, handsomely. They basically tell them that they'll be paid, blah, blah, blah. After our main group gets all kidnapped, or when the mayor makes that decision, he sends out his goon squad. He collects up all of the homeless people. Our main group of homeless people that we're following ends up getting split up. And by the way, Awfully. I fucking loved Awfully. For a character that we never even see on screen, it's almost like the cameraman is a character in this movie. Because every now and again, one of the characters in the movie will look directly into the camera and say, "Hey, Awfully, are you okay?" And we'll see this black-gloved hand, like, do a thumbs up or something. We never hear him speak, and we never see him. But for some reason, I found him entertaining. I just thought it was silly that the cameraman actually gets to be in the movie. Well, his hands, anyway. Maybe not the cameraman himself. But what's also funny is that the guy who plays Awfully, by the way, who is the director of the film, Ryan Kruger, also does the voice of Sokol. So I'm thoroughly.
Yeah, that could have been why he doesn't speak anything, because it's gonna confuse everybody.
Probably, yeah, absolutely. But goddamn, kudos to Ryan, man. You did a great job. I mean, Awfully, like I said, anybody could have played Awfully, but it just tickled me for some reason to have this character that we never see other than his hands. So yeah, just absolutely loved it. Anyway, after our group gets taken by the mayor, they get split up and taken to different cells. Eventually, one of the cells filled with homeless people gets taken to another area. And one of the people in this group that's being taken away is part of our main group that we've been watching. I forgot what his name was, but he was one of the brothers who were the drug, like the guys who made the drugs for this group of homeless people. He ends up getting taken away. We see that group of people get let into a cell, and then gas starts leaking into the cell. Well, the guy from our group that we're following, he actually sees a gas mask on the floor and grabs it and puts it on. Unfortunately, he did end up putting it on too late. The gas did still take effect, and unfortunately, he did end up passing, which, turned into an emotional moment. Chef, one of my favorite characters in the movie, Chef ends up dying too when they end up capturing one of those drones. This is before they realize that the drones are actually spitting this gas out and killing all the homeless people. They actually end up capturing one of the drones, but Chef unfortunately walks right up to it. He starts looking at it and investigating it, but then it releases its gas right in Chef's face, and Chef's head fucking explodes. It explodes off of his torso. It's like somebody put a stick of dynamite in his neck, but it didn't blow his head into pieces. It blew it off. So that's kind of entertaining, even though I did like the character a lot, and I was actually kind of sad, because you could see it coming. It's like you could see Chef approaching the drone, not knowing what it is, and it's like, no, don't do it, but he does it. So anyway, eventually Alex makes a deal with the Rat King's goons to help her take down the mayor and the local government. They end up agreeing. They end up making a deal that we are not privy to. I'm not sure if sex was involved or what, but they end up making a deal off camera, and they end up, the Rat King's goons do end up being helpful. They end up killing a lot of fucking people, to the point that the Rat King's toady, a slave that she keeps on a chain attached to her, ends up becoming the new mayor at the end of the movie. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Of course, eventually our group is able to subdue the scientist, the guy who created the gas. They're able to get the keys from him. They end up opening all the cells, releasing all of the homeless people. And then our boy Ronald ends up taking this drug that's been teased to him the entire movie. There's a drug dealer in this movie called Society. Literally, his name is Society. he has a drug on him that all through the movie Ronald wants to buy, but society keeps telling him, oh, no, you're not ready for this yet. You're not ready for this yet. But then finally, at the end of the film, when they're all in the cell, society is there. He pulls out the vial of glowing blue liquid and says, you're finally ready. And what it turns out to be almost like a super soldier serum for the Marvel fans out there. Ronald basically turns into a fucking Rambo on crack. Literally just he picks up a gun, which he's never done the entire movie, and he's a fucking marksman. He's killing everybody with one shot. He's not even spraying bullets. He's literally taking one shot. Boom, you're dead. Boom, you're dead. Boom, you're dead. Fucking awesome as hell. He ends up getting shot in the chest and doesn't even feel it. Right above his heart too. Like the bullet looks like it missed his heart by like maybe an inch, but he doesn't even feel it. He's like, nah, man, I don't even feel that shit. Of course, eventually they are able to get to the mayor. Alex has taken some of the canister grenades that they made out of the Viper, and she's using it against the mayor's goons. We get multiple scenes of like high society people melting, police officers melting, SWAT team members melting. Eventually, they corner the mayor. The mayor, of course, tries to do his deal of, oh, yeah, no repercussions. Just, what are you going to get if you kill me? Nothing. I'm just going to get replaced by somebody else who's going to hate homeless people, blah, blah, blah. They don't give a shit. Ronald ends up taking one of the canisters of, or no, not Ronald, excuse me, Alex. Alex ends up taking one of the canisters of the Viper gas and literally just jamming it down the mayor's throat so that when it opens, it's literally spraying the shit right down into his lungs. And this is where we see the mayor. This is the one where it's the yellow death. Like the liquid that the liquid that's coming out of him, that's pouring out of him, is yellow. It seems like we get yellow, we get green, we get purple, we get blue. We get like a rainbow of different colors of fluid coming out of these people that are melting. So like I said, they kill the mayor and everybody's happy. Ultimately, they act like they changed the world, but the mayor had a point. Ultimately, when you cut the head off a snake, another one's just going to show up, You take out one drug kingpin, another one's just going to take his place. So I don't know what they were celebrating, but then at the end of the movie, we see that, like I said, the Rat King's Toady, who actually is a very eloquent speaker, takes over. He is now the mayor of this town, and then one of the Rat King's toadies, who I guess is one of his toadies now, basically asks him, so what do we do now? And the Rat King just basically looks at a map and points at Washington, D.C. Yes, my friends, these folks want to try to take out Washington. I don't know what Washington is like in 2050, because like I said, this movie takes place entirely in Africa. We don't get really to see anything that's going on anywhere else in the world. So, like I said, that's the end of our film. Credits roll, and then we get a post-credit scene that, like I said, I can kind of live without it. But basically, as I mentioned earlier, Sokol is the horniest imaginary friend ever. Oh, by the way, I forgot to mention, too, that when Ronald was on the liquid, he could actually see Sokol. He was literally the only other person that saw Sokol besides 2-Bit, and it was because he was on that crazy super soldier drug. So I thought that was kind of entertaining. And then they even have a couple of exchanges during the final confrontation where he's like, at one point, Sokol makes a joke, and Ronald's like, hey, that was a great joke. Classic line, buddy. Like I said, I just love the interactions between these people. Anyway, post-credit scene comes up, and there's Sokol bent over a table, basically telling 2-Bit, come on, drop your pants, let's do it. And 2-Bit obviously doesn't really want to. He's like, this seems weird. And Sokol's like, what? There's nothing weird about it. There's nothing gay about it. It's just two friends helping each other out to, bust a nut. And finally, 2-Bit relents, and he's like, okay. He walks up behind Sokol, who is still basically in the doggy position the whole time, with his ass facing 2-Bit. 2-Bit pulls down his pants, and he basically inserts, and then the camera fades to black, and that is the actual end of our film. So, Yeah, like I said, I don't know if my walkthrough gave it any justice because, like I said, I was endlessly entertained. I don't think I was bored once in this movie. Like all the interactions, all the over-the-top characters, the mayor, Officer Maggot, Two Bit, Sokol, Ronald, just a chef, just yeah. There's so much to like about this movie that it is easily the surprise of 2024 for me. I absolutely was expecting nothing. So yeah. There you go, folks. Street Trash 2024. I will go ahead and turn it back to our illustrious leader, Mr. Mike Merriman.
So Street Trash turned out to be Street Treasure for Venom.
Yes! And, you know, like I said, I don't expect a lot of people to like this movie. I am conscious of the fact that since I just watched the original and still don't like it, that this movie just being slightly above average just makes it seem like a 10 out of 10 compared to the original, even though it's not. It's objectively not a perfect film by any stretch of the imagination. But if you watch them back to back like I did, I think you're really thoroughly going to enjoy Street Trash 2024. If you've never seen the original, I would say it's not essential viewing. Just watch this one. Because like I said, there's no connection other than the Viper, the liquor. Other than the Viper, there's no real connection between these two movies. So I would say don't worry about watching the original. Go into this one fresh and, you know, just try to have a good time. Shut off your brain. Don't question the science. Don't question the logic. Just take the movie at face value, and I think you'll have a good time. So that's it for me.
I agree. I think it's a fun time as well.
Yep.
I just love the practical effects. I thought the score was a little understated, but still good.
I love the song that was playing during the final confrontation. It kind of had like a weird 90s heavy metal vibe to it. I kind of dug it. Overall, the score was serviceable. Like it wasn't great, but there are moments in the movie where you notice the score and it's like, hey, that's pretty cool. So I at the very least, I'm going to point that out.
Ooh. All right. Well, that's Street Trash and fresh cuts for this episode. So I just got out our Thanksgiving commentary of Thanksgiving. It might literally be uploading to YouTube as we speak. I think it's not finished yet, but it's in the process, which means as soon as Phil puts it on the network, then it'll get the official post. But since I put stuff on YouTube really quick, it tends to start getting views before the network. So there's that. And then since I'm only working half this week, I'll probably go ahead and get the latest episode of No More Room in Hell up. Not the commentary, but I think it was 62, 63. 63, I think. Yep. Yeah, and what do we... Actually, no, I should probably go to you guys, because just in case you've got anything new. Venom, is there anything you have?
For the most part, no, but I do have one. Well, obviously, Mike already talked about our commentary on the main show, No More Room in Hell. We did our Thanksgiving holiday commentary on the movie Thanksgiving, which wasn't a first-time watch for me, but it might as well have been, because I had only seen it once before, and I was incredibly drunk, so I barely remembered any of it. So it was basically a first-time watch. And I was drunk when we did the commentary, too, so that was fun. Anyway, so yeah, there's that. And then the old, obviously, Creature Comforts episode 32 is still our latest episode, where we looked at the original Godzilla from 1954. And the only new thing that I have to talk about is what I did last night. Last night, I joined Kate and Matt from the, the Eternal Darkness of the Not So Spotless Mind podcast. And we did a commentary for the original Terrifier, and which ended up being a really fun night. It was actually a first-time watch for one of the hosts on the show, and she actually ended up enjoying it. So that turned out to be good. So yeah, I obviously that episode won't be out for a little while. I'm not sure what the release schedule is for Not So Spotless Mind. I know they just released episode 49. It's episode 50 that I'm on. They wanted to do something special for their 50th episode, so they did their first commentary ever. at least, official numbered episode commentary, and I was able to be a part of that. So that was fun. Glenn, who you might remember from the Graveyard Shit podcast, and I can't remember what the name of that podcast was before that, but he was the other guest host on that one. So yeah, a fun time was had by all. Obviously, with that podcast being based out of the UK, it kind of made for a weird recording situation with them being 8 hours ahead of me in California. So I ended up having to break my rule and recording a little bit earlier than I would normally like to. But obviously, to work with a UK podcast that I've never worked with before, it's obviously worth it. So yeah, when that episode is out officially, I will let you all know. But yeah, you can look for that. I believe they are on the Legion Podcast Network, so check them out on Legion. And that's pretty much all I have. Yeah, it's been a pretty slow November. Go figure. Other than all the Godzilla movies I'm watching, but otherwise, pretty slow. That's it for me.
All right. How about you, Don?
Yeah, not much else. Creature Comforts is still out there. Definitely give that one a listen. I did a guest spot on the Joe Blow Horror Show. We looked at the Mexican zombie slasher Cemetery of Terror, which I'm told that one is supposed to be out early December. So I think they released the episode they recorded before me over the weekend. So mine should be the next one in the rotation. But that was a fun time. Give that one a listen. It should be out, like I said, on their feed pretty soon. And I think there's one other thing that I recorded, but I can't remember. Definitely give that one a listen when it comes out, and hopefully the next Creature Comforts will be out sooner rather than later. But otherwise, back to you.
All right, cool. I got nothing that I didn't already mention at the start of this part. As far as Fresh Cuts goes, I think it'll be another VOD pick, right?
Yes. We're not back in the theater till December 6th.
Yeah, and I think we still got to decide what our official last week of doing episodes are for the year, because technically Christmas. Our next episode we record will be the first week of December. Yeah. We usually take a couple weeks off at the end, I think. So
we usually take a couple of weeks, but I mean, if Nosferatu turns out to be as great as I completely anticipate it's going to be, I think we should do it. It's going to be weird because it drops on Christmas Day, which would mean the episode would get recorded on December 30th, which, that's usually
I don't have an issue doing that.
Yeah, we would usually do our end of year list on that, the last Monday of the year or the last week of the year. But maybe we can carry it over to the first week of 2025 this time, because, Robert Eggers, he doesn't put out many movies. And when he does, I'm almost always impressed. So I think it's one we need to kind of talk about here.
No, I'm willing to take a conversation.
Yeah. And I love Nosferatu. I mean, I love it as a property. I love the Klaus Kinski one. I love the original. I'm a big fan of Nosferatu. So I have some pretty high expectations for this. Let's hope Robert Eggers delivers.
I think that is a plan. So, yeah, we'll figure out exactly how we want to work it, but I would count on us doing an episode on Nosferatu, whatever that Monday. You said the 30th?
Yeah, the 30th is that Monday after Christmas. I mean, we could probably take the week of Christmas off. Let me look.
Yeah, we won't record an episode that Monday before Christmas, but...
That's what I'm thinking. Yeah, because Christmas is on a Wednesday. So it's close enough that I think we can blow off that week and then do Nosferatu and then do our top 10.
Yeah, and that works too, because then since it releases on Christmas, it gives everyone time to still have the rest of the week or weekend to see it.
Exactly. Yeah.
So that's perfect. Cool. All right. Well, with that said, thanks everyone listening to another episode of Fresh Cuts. We'll be back in a week with another one. Let's say bye to our listeners.
Later.
I'm going to give the most obvious advice I've ever given in my life. Don't be homeless. It seems like an absolute shit show. Obviously, most people don't have a choice, but goddamn, it seems like in any world, whether it's a dystopian future or even modern day LA, being homeless is a shit show. So yeah, avoid it at all costs.
I endorse that statement.
Thirded.
All right. Peace.